Hello grade 2 students and welcome back. Today we're gonna start with a new unit, Unit 5, Changes to Earth's Surface. Today we're gonna start with Lesson 1, What Changes on Earth Happen Slowly, Part 1. For today we're gonna cover the following points. Introduction to Unit 5, Changes to Earth's Surface, page 221. Introduction to Lesson 1, What Changes on Earth Happen Slowly, page 224-225. Explain Weathering section, page 226-227. Are you ready? So I need you to open your books to page 221 and follow up carefully. So today we're gonna start with a new unit, which is Unit 5, Changes to Earth's Surface. Now you guys might think, when I say changes to Earth's surface, what do I mean? Think. Excellent. I mean things that cause changes to Earth's surface that might be a quick change or a slow change, okay? So the changes that happen to Earth's surface are of two main types, either quick changes or slow changes. And we're going to study about all of them in this unit, okay? So, let's take a minute to observe carefully in this picture. What do we see? Excellent. We can observe that the wind is blowing. What do you guys think? Do you think that the wind can cause changes to Earth's surface? Let's find out. We open our books to page 224, Lesson 1. What changes on Earth happen slowly? It means, what are the things that cause Earth's surface to change but needs a lot of time to cause these changes? Let's find out. Take a minute to observe carefully, guys. How do you think this rock turned into this arch? How did it change into this arch? How did it change into this arch? What do you guys think? Take a minute to observe carefully. How did this rock change into this current shape? This arch? What do you guys think? Think. Excellent. Guys, as you expected, the wind, because it kept year after year, day after day, 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 hitting the rock, okay? So the wind might cause the center of the rock to blow away, and we're going to learn about this, which is a process called weathering, okay, that causes changes to Earth's surface, but really slowly. So this didn't happen between 2 days. It needs a lot of time, like a million years, okay? Or the water, because it kept hitting the rock, it might have also caused this change to the center of the rock, okay? Let's read together. Nature slowly changes rocks on Earth. So the nature, when we say nature, we mean the wind, we mean the water, okay? We mean the plants. They might cause changes to rocks on Earth. Let's check out how. By the end of this lesson, I will be able to describe some changes that happen slowly on Earth. So we're going to study some changes that happen slowly on Earth, okay? Let's find out. We're moved to page 225. So we move to page 225, Slow Changes to Earth's Surface. Look at these pictures to explore how Bryce Canyon has formed over time. So we could see that this Bryce Canyon was made of really big rocks. What do you guys think happened for this canyon to change into these small rocks, okay? What happened? Excellent! You would think, guys, that the wind kept on hitting these rocks day after day, day after day, day after day, day after day, year after year, year after year, year after year, year after year, causing the rocks to become weaker and to start breaking into smaller pieces and changing its shape in a process called weathering that we're going to learn about in a minute. Okay, guys? So, can you explain it? What causes slow changes to rocks on Earth? What causes slow changes to rocks on Earth? Excellent. So far we know that the wind can cause slow changes to rocks on Earth. Let's check out what more. Don't worry, guys. A video about the Bryce Canyon is gonna be provided in a link format in the instruction sheet so you could watch it later on, because due to copyright issues I will not be able to include it in this presentation, okay, or in this video. Clear? Let's move on. We open our books to page 226. Weathering. Look at these pictures to explore how weathering causes slow changes to Earth over time. So, I'm gonna reread it and then I'm gonna start explaining. Weathering. Look at these pictures to explore how weathering causes slow changes to Earth over time. So before, 4 million years ago, check out how this rock was, or how this mountain was, okay? So are you guys observing? Check out how this mountain was. And check now, after 4 million years, what happened to this rock? Or, sorry, what happened to this mountain? Excellent, it's becoming smaller, right? Why do you think it is becoming smaller? Excellent, because the wind keeps on hitting it day after day, day after day, day after day, day after day, year after year, year after year, year after year, year after year, making this rock weaker and the mountain smaller year after year. Let's read together. Are you guys ready? Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Wind and water smash against these mountains every day. Bits of rock break off very slowly. Over millions of years, the mountains become smoother and more rounded. So I'm going to reread it one more time, then I'm going to explain. Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Wind and water smash against these mountains every day. Bits of rock break off very slowly. Over millions of years, the mountains become smoother and more rounded. So, are you guys ready? They're telling us that weathering is a process, is a thing, okay, that happens. Why? How does it happen? Is a thing that occurs, that happens, and when it occurs, it breaks the rocks into smaller pieces. How does it break the rocks into smaller pieces? Each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day, the wind and the water smash against the mountains. They hit the mountains, okay? Each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day, they keep on hitting the mountains, okay? And the rocks become weaker and start to break off into smaller pieces slowly, year after year, year after year. The mountains become smoother and more rounded, as we can check in the picture. Okay? So I'm gonna go one more time. What is weathering? Weathering is a process, okay? Is a thing that happens. How does it happen? Using wind and water, what happens? The wind and the water smash, they hit the rocks each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day, year after year, year after year, year after year, making the rocks weaker, and it starts to break it down into smaller pieces, and year after year, year after year, after a really long time, what happened to this mountain? The mountain became smoother and more rounded, changing the shape of it. Okay, so do you think it is a quick change or a slow change? Excellent, it is a slow change because it took 4 million years for this mountain to change its shape. Did it change on its own? No. Through weathering, which is a process, okay, which is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. How does it do so? The wind and the water, each day, every day, each day, every day, when the wind is blowing and hitting the rocks, day after day, day after day, day after day, it makes the rocks weaker, and the rocks start to break into smaller pieces, okay? And year after year, after many years of the same thing happening over and over again, it's a pattern that happens day after day, over many years, what happens? The mountain's shape will change and it will become smoother and more rounded. So when we talk about weathering, one more time, what do we mean? We mean it is a process. A process, it means it is a thing that is what? It is a process. It is a thing that happens in many steps, okay? A series of steps, of actions that breaks the rocks in smaller pieces. How does this happen? Each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day, the wind and the water smash against these mountains, okay? They smash, they hit the mountains each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day, year after year, year after year, it makes the mountains or the rocks and the mountains weaker, and the rocks start to break off into smaller pieces. And after many years, the shape of the mountains and the rocks will change. That's why it is a slow change, because it needs a lot of time for the wind and the water to change the shape of the mountain. It's not like an earthquake that directly changes the shape of Earth's surface or directly changes Earth's surface, okay? It is a change that needs a lot of time to cause a change to Earth's surface. Clear? We pick up our pencil and we underline carefully. Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. See? So year after year, the wind kept on hitting the rocks over here in this picture, and it started to break it into smaller pieces. Check out, did you see? Can you see it? Did you see it? Excellent. So it started to break it down in smaller pieces. So what is weathering? Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Clear? Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Okay? Smaller pieces. Clear? One more time. Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Again, weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. Okay, so it breaks the rocks into smaller pieces. Clear? One more time. Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. How does this happen? Each day, every day, each day, every day. The wind keeps on hitting the rocks year after year, year after year, year after year. The rocks become weaker and they start to fall apart into smaller pieces, okay? And it will start breaking into smaller pieces. Clear so far? Let's move on. So what is weathering? Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. One more time. Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. One more time. Weathering is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces. How does this happen? Either weathering by wind, or weathering by water and ice, or weathering by plants. So for today, we're gonna continue on page 226 and start with weathering by wind, which means today we're gonna cover how weathering happens through wind, or how does the wind cause weathering. Are we ready? Let's read together. Weathering by wind is a slow change. Wind carries bits of sand. The sand hits the rock. When the wind blows, over time the rock becomes weaker. Small pieces break off. Over many years, weathering from wind changes the shape of the rock. So, I'm going to read it one more time, then I'm going to explain, okay? So, weathering by wind is a slow change. Wind carries bits of sand. The sand hits the rock. When the wind blows, over time the rock becomes weaker. Small pieces break off. Over many years, weathering from wind changes the shape of the rock. So I'm going to explain. They're telling us that weathering by wind is a slow change, so it does not happen quickly between a day and a night. What happens is that it needs a lot of time for the wind to cause changes to Earth's surface. What happens? How does the wind cause weathering? How does it cause the rocks to break into smaller pieces? Let's check and see. They're telling us that the wind carries bits of sand. The sand hits the rocks. It hits the rock, okay? So it hits the rock. when it hits the rock year after year, year after year, year after year, day after day, day after day, day after day, year after year, year after year, year after year, the rock becomes weaker and it starts to break down into smaller pieces. Okay? Over many years, what happens? Weathering from wind changes the shape of the rock. So, I'm gonna read it one more time, then I'm gonna explain it more and more. Okay, so weathering by wind is a slow change. Wind carries bits of sand. The sand hits the rock when the wind blows. Over time, the rock becomes weaker. Small pieces break off. Over many years, weathering from wind changes the shape of the rock. So what are they telling us? We listen up carefully. They're telling us that weathering, which is a process that breaks rocks into smaller pieces, happens by the help or with the help of the wind. Why? How does this happen? They're telling us that the wind, what about the wind? The wind carries small bits of sand, okay, and the sand keeps on hitting the rocks day after day, day after day, day after day, day after day, and the rock becomes weaker and starts to break down into smaller pieces, causing weathering, okay, but this doesn't happen between a day and a night, okay, or this doesn't happen within a short period of time. It needs millions of years to happen. So over many years, weathering from wind changes the shape of the rock. Okay, and as we see over here, see the wind when it blows, it carries what? Bits of sand, small pieces or particles of sand, okay? What happens? The sand hits the rocks each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day. The sand in the wind hits the rocks and makes the rock weaker, and the rock when it becomes weaker, it starts to break off into smaller pieces. Over many years, weathering from wind changes the shape of the rock, as we can see in this picture. Okay, so in this picture, each day, every day, each day, every day, each day, every day, the wind kept on smashing the rocks, and as it smashes the rocks, it has within it sand. The sand makes the rock become weaker, okay, and the small bits of sand that keeps on hitting the rocks day after day, day after day, day after day makes the rocks weaker, and when it becomes weaker, it starts to fall apart into smaller pieces. It starts to break up into smaller pieces, okay, changing the shape of the rock after many years and not directly. That's why it is a slow change. Clear? And this is a pattern, weathering by wind. Why? Because it keeps on happening each day, every day, each day, every day, over many years, year after year, year after year, which means this is a pattern. Remember, a pattern is something that is repeated, okay? It's exercise time. Get ready to wear your thinking caps on and get ready. We open to page 227 and we read carefully the question. How will wind change a rock? A. Wind will blow a rock to a new place. B. Wind will turn a rock into a mountain. C. Wind will weather a rock. Remember, when we say weather, it means it's going to break it into smaller pieces. So one more time. How will wind change a rock? A. Wind will blow a rock to a new place. B. Wind will turn a rock into a mountain. C. Wind will weather a rock. Take a minute to think. How will wind change a rock? A. Wind will blow a rock to a new place. B. Wind will turn a rock into a mountain. C. Wind will weather a rock. What do you guys think? Excellent! It is C indeed. Of course it is not A, because wind will not blow a rock to a new place. B. Wind will turn a rock into a mountain. No, the wind will break the mountain and make it smaller over many years, okay? But why? Because the wind keeps on hitting the rocks and the mountain year after year, year after year, year after year. The mountain or the rocks will become weaker and start to break down into smaller pieces. And then the mountain, after many, many years of weathering by wind, it will become more rounded and smoother. Okay, so of course the wind will not turn a rock into a mountain. And is it C, wind will weather a rock? Correct, it is C, wind will weather a rock, which means it will break the rock into smaller pieces. Clear? Thank you.